on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. So I do want to go ahead and say, before I get too far into this video, I make movie content, I make TV show content. That's the stuff that I know a lot about. I know a lot about the ins and outs of Hollywood. I know a lot about movies. I know a lot about TV shows. That's the kind of stuff that I'm incredibly knowledgeable. I do not like talking about politics necessarily because as somebody who's only 21 years old, I really don't know an insane amount about politics. However, to talk about the things that I'm going to be talking about in this video, I do need to talk about politics a little bit because they are inherently important towards this thing that we're going to be discussing. I also want to say, before I get too far into this video, the title is a little clickbaity. I am going to obviously be talking about what the title talks about, but I am mostly going to be talking about two forms of TV shows that are currently coming out on Disney Plus in particular that I think is relatively interesting, that they are kind of watering down specific elements of specific characters, and I think that it's not great because I'm just going to say it straight up, representation matters. Let's talk about it. Okay, so the first show I'm going to talk about Spider-Man right now because I think that Spider-Man, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man just came out and it's relatively good. I'm incredibly excited about it. I'm going to be making a full-length review for it sooner. I think it's probably going to end up being on Monday next week. I am insanely excited about that show. I think that for the most part, that show did an incredible job. And I think that for the most part, it actually was relatively woke. And I think that that's something that I think is kind of funny. For people who do not know, the voice actor for that TV show, his name is Hudson Thames. He came out in an interview and said, one of the things he was most scared about with this TV show is that this TV show is going to be too woke. And I think that that is absolutely insane because, like, did he watch the TV show? Does he know anything about who the main characters in this TV show are? Because it does a lot of things that a lot of people would complain about as being woke. We have a black character who is growing up in America, in New York, living in kind of a ghetto-ish area, and ends up joining a gang throughout the course of this TV show. That's kind of, I don't know, woke a little bit. So I think that it's interesting that he's like, I don't want this show to be woke. And then they go there. They go and they talk about topics that are a little bit harder to talk about and a little bit less palatable for a lot of younger audiences. And I think that that is incredibly cool. I think that the perspective change, I think it was in episode 2, where they're showing Peter and what he was going through, and he's going to his home or whatever, where he's going to go hang out with Aunt May. And then they show Lonnie having to take his really, really long walk to where he lives. I think that that was interesting. I think that they've done a really good job with the Lonnie Lincoln character, and that is something that is absolutely cool. And once again, representation matters. I think that they're doing a great job of kind of fleshing it out, that he doesn't have things as easily as a lot of other people do. And a lot of people kind of are like, hey, you need to do this right thing. Hey, trust me, you're going to get yourself hurt. You need to, like, leave this gang. And for him, it's not that simple. It's not that easy. And he's constantly kind of bringing up the point that, like, they don't know what it's like to be in his footsteps, where he's so scared and concerned about his family's safety, and being somebody who is as young as he is, but having to kind of be the man of the house and kind of like do whatever he can to take care of his family. It's very scary. And I think that they're doing such an incredible job with that character, and I love it to death. And I think that that's awesome. One thing about Spider-Man, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, that I am slightly concerned about, they have a character named Nico Minoru, who in this show, they aren't necessarily diving into, like, relationships that much. Like, there's not a lot of, like, love stories that are going on in this film at the moment. Sorry, I called it a film. It's a TV show. But I think that it is relatively interesting. That is a character in the comics that is a lesbian, but throughout this show, there's multiple moments where it kind of seems like she has feelings for Peter Parker, and then there's also a sequence where Harry goes to her, drives to her, you know, takes her to this really cute spot where he goes wherever he likes to, like, hang out in the city, and they have some pizza together, and they have, like, an entire, like, episode where they're pretty much just spending time together as, like, the B plot, and it's interesting, and I like it, but it also kind of feels like there are romantic undertones, which, like I said, Nico Minoru, a comic book character that is strictly a lesbian, it is a little interesting to me that they kind of have these, like, ships going on right now where it kind of seems like she's going to potentially maybe date a guy character. I'm not incredibly excited about that. I think that that is still something that they're not necessarily diving deep into, because at the end of the day, I do think Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is trying to be a kids' TV show, so they're not diving into some of the elements of, okay, well, this person's dating this person, and that person's dating this person. I think that for the most part, they're not touching relationships at all, and I think that that is kind of a good thing. So, that being said, I don't want to be like, oh my god, you're making this character that's a lesbian, not a lesbian, because they haven't done anything with relationships yet. So, I'm not going to dive there, but I will say, as somebody who is slightly weary of Disney Plus taking away things that are inherently woke, that was scaring me a little bit. But that being said, for the most part, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man does an incredible job. I really enjoyed it. I'm not going to give it a hard time. Now to talk about the topic that I actually wanted to make this whole video about, Alrighty, so now to the topic that I really wanted to make this entire video about, but I wasn't really sure if I wanted to get into it, because this is a TV show that's by Pixar. I ended up making a review for the first 2 episodes the other day because I watched them, not expecting to really have high opinions on them, but then they ended up being incredibly good. There's a TV show right now that is airing on Disney Plus called Win or Lose. It is coming out week to week. Right now, they have the first 2 episodes out. It is a relatively good show. I'm really enjoying it. But when I was doing a little bit more research into it after I made my review of it and I was making a thumbnail, I noticed that there's a lot of things talking about there being a controversy about this show. And I went to go see it because I'm like, obviously, anytime Pixar or Disney has some kind of like controversy, it's usually something as stupid as like, they casted an actress who people think doesn't look like the fictional mermaid, which... Not going to dive into that because I think that that is one of the most stupid complaints ever. And my main complaint about that, actually, I'm going to get into it a little bit. Stop attacking the actors or actresses for getting casted, because the person you should be getting mad at is the casting director. If you're mad about a specific casting and you're like, oh my god, this is terrible representation, they didn't get somebody who matches the character, cool. Don't be mad at the actor or actress. They are simply somebody who is trying to get a job, because I don't know if you know this, that is their occupation. That's what they do for a living. And if they don't have a role every, so often, they're not able to afford to live. So yeah, don't get mad at the actor or actress because they're not who you wanted in the role. Get mad at the casting directors. That's something that's been driving me insane for fucking forever, because like they'll cast somebody who's perfect for the role because, they care about the acting abilities, the singing abilities, how they look on screen, the chemistry that they have with the other actors. And people are over here like, oh, they don't look exactly like this animated character, I'm mad about it. It's not that serious. It's really not. But to specifically talk about the win or lose controversy, though, once I finally figured out what it was, there was originally going to be a storyline where one of the main characters who is in this show, for people who do not know, each episode is focusing on a different person's perspective. There was going to be an episode where one of the girls is revealed to be a trans girl, and a lot of people had a really hard time with that, and a lot of people, I guess, were really upset about it, and Pixar ended up just completely scrapping that storyline, and they completely made it where that character is no longer going to be trans at all. They're going to just be a regular cis character, and I think they're originally going to be like trans and lesbian, and I think that would have been incredibly interesting to kind of dive into in something as simple as a kids TV show. And I think that a lot of people are kind of excited because they're like, yeah, thank god kids don't need to know about trans people. But I think that is just a stupid perspective on life, because here's the thing. In life, you are going to learn about things you are uncomfortable learning about. You are going to have to interact with stuff that you don't necessarily want to interact with. That's just a part of the human experience. Unfortunately, you will have to learn things that you don't necessarily want to learn. And I think that's kind of getting towards some of the political stuff here that I didn't want to talk about. They're banning a bunch of books in schools right now in America. That's something that the Trump administration is very keen on. They want to get a bunch of books out of American schools. They're like, kids shouldn't be able to read these things. This is really bad. And a big thing that a lot of people are talking about is just like, well, that's good because these books talk about this thing and that thing and this thing, and they're having a lot of problems with it. But I think that's something a lot of people are understanding is, at no point in your life are you in as controlled of an environment as being in school. When you're in school, there are specific lessons that you need to learn. There are specific things that you need to talk about. And it is important that you are learning about it in an organized, controlled environment where they're teaching you the information that you actually need to know. That is important. They're not, sugarcoating anything, because that's something that I think about school that is really important is when you're learning about history, you're learning about everything that happens. You're supposed to be learning about everything that happens. And it's important to not water it down. It's important to not sugarcoat it, because some terrible things have happened in the course of human history. And if we start ignoring that, we start letting things like that happen again, because we're missing the clear signs that are as clear as day that they are 100% going to happen. And when it comes to stuff like this TV show, taking away a trans character, I think that a big problem here is you make it where instead of learning about trans people through a TV show, which is so far is very artistically different. It's not doing anything to be very pow in your face. Oh my god, look, this person's trans. I'm pretty sure the way that they would have handled it in the TV show would have been very symbolic, that a lot of kids watching it actually wouldn't even really fully realize what's going on. They would just understand the struggles of her pain, because for the most part, they're using really cool, in the second episode, right, we're dealing with somebody who has a lot of emotional barriers and a lot of walls and isn't letting people get incredibly close to him. And the way that they decide to visualize that is by giving him a suit of armor. And then as he's getting more comfortable and as he lets himself be more vulnerable and susceptible to how other people treat him, he takes off the armor. That is incredible symbolism. It is something that if you're a kid, you're not even really going to realize that there's something deeper happening there. And in the first episode, the character is going through an insane amount of stress, and they're incredibly nervous, they have so much pressure on them, and they have this giant like weight on their chest, and they symbolize it by a little monster that's created by their tears that is really small at first, and then they start having more doubts about themselves, they start having more stress, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the way that they're doing that is symbolizing this person's emotional distress by giving it a cute little animated little creature. And I think that the way that Pixar is already showing them handling those two difficult topics with, somebody being somebody who's scared to show their emotions and somebody who has so much weight on their chest that they just need to get off. They're doing it in a very symbolic way that's absolutely adorable, that's not in any way controversial whatsoever, and it's a way that a lot of kids can watch it and kind of just understand what the characters are going through, instead of just understanding like, oh my god, there's this really scary thing that's going on. It is important that kids get this kind of background information, because now that they know about this like sequence where they see this kid who is, going through all of this emotional weight and all this depression or whatever, now that they've seen it like that, when they start learning about their own emotions, they're going to be able to relate to something. They're going to be able to know that they're not alone, which is incredibly, incredibly important. And I think that that's something that's scary, is a lot of kids who are growing up and they are feeling like they're trapped in the wrong bodies and they're feeling like they are trans. They're not going to have any form of representation that they can compare themselves to, and they're going to be feeling even more alienated than they already are. And I feel like having a TV show, which is something that they could look at and be like, oh my god, there are more people like me, is so, so, so important. And instead of erasing that, we should be embracing that. And it actually is absolutely pissing me off that Pixar, a company that I love to death, that I'm really incredibly proud of, I think that every single TV show they make, every single movie that they make is something spectacular and is something for the entire family to love and enjoy. I love them so much. I just got the Pixar lamp tattooed on my body. Hold up, I'm not doing a great job of showing it, but I love this brand, and it absolutely just absolutely makes me incredibly upset that they decided to cut that episode and completely get rid of that storyline, because that is something that is important. And there are kids out there who potentially needed to see that, to know that they're not alone, to know that what they're going through is not something that's terrible and monstrous and mutilating. It's not. It's something that is completely natural. It's something that's been happening in the course of human history way longer than the American government has been, way longer than even the old ancient days of ancient Egypt. People have been non-binary and transgender. So it kills me that we're acting like this is something that doesn't exist. We're just trying to wipe it off the face of the earth. And it's not right. It's not acceptable, and I absolutely hate it, and I will not stand for it. So I just wanted to come on here and make this video. It's incredibly serious. I know I'm typically more of a haha funny, let's review this thing kind of guy, but I think that this is just incredibly, incredibly depressing to me, and I just wanted to come on here and make a video about it because I think it's important.